Okay, so before we get really started, if you watched my video on who I thought was the MVP, you know who I picked. But if you haven't, I'm not one of those creators to push you to watch something you didn't come here to watch. So I think the MVP is Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Now, if you want to know why, then please head over there. However, I've seen so many of my fellow creators just eviscerating Nikola Jokic in his campaign for his fourth MVP that I felt I had to defend him. No pun intended. The key reason to discredit Jokic is his lack of perceived defense. And I respect their opinions, and no, I'm not going to sit here and tell you why Jokic should be in the running for Defensive Player of the Year, because no matter how much I reach, there's just nothing I can say with a straight face that can move the needle that way. Jokic, quite frankly, isn't a great defender. I'll say he's decent, but I won't even say he's a good defender. However, when talking MVP, we have to not look at this from a GOAT debate type lens. This award is not the best overall player in the league award. It's the most valuable player. Keyword value. What does value mean? Value is the importance, worth, or usefulness of something. I'll pluck one word out of that and say how important a player is to his team and what his team is doing. I mean, I've gone through the numbers and advanced metrics for both Jokic and SGA. Jokic being top 5 all season in points, rebounds, and assists. I think he is or was tied for second in the entire NBA for steals and blocks. That's where he nosedives. But before I go into some historical content, let's talk about Jokic's defense. It's not good at all. I don't think it's due to effort, but I can't say that with confidence. It's the byproduct of the current era of NBA play. How many back-to-the-basket players are currently in the NBA? Long gone are your Shaqs, Tim Duncans, Hakeems that will post you up and back you down, battling for position. Everything is facing up or down. Not many bigs play primarily inside, and Jokic, who's never been nimble on his feet, is obviously going to lose the little he had as he ages. So him having to guard Brook Lopez out on the perimeter or Cat, he's just not quick laterally, and to be able to recover from what some of those guys can do is just not an easy feat for him. I know some will say, well, what about Tim Duncan? He wasn't lightning quick, but maintained a stellar defensive career, which I say you're absolutely right, but Tim Duncan is a rare breed. What he lacked athletically, he made up in super accurate timing when defending bigs, whether they're posting him up or facing him down. This is why he was able to match up with Blake Griffin in his later years, because he would time his block attempts perfectly. And when comparing him to Jokic, he has a longer wingspan, which helps tremendously. Without this getting into a bunch of excuses, Jokic just isn't built to play the type of defense most want him to be considered a solid defender as a player. But what we can't argue is the things he does well as a defender. Mainly, he's aware of what is going on the court, so he's not just ball watching. A key defensive metric, defensive rebounding, he does very well. In fact, he's the leading defensive rebounder in the NBA, which when you actually think of it, is a big part of the definition of defense, which is limiting your opponent's ability to score because it limits teams' possessions with the ball. He's also leading in steals as a center, but steals are one of those iffy stats that don't really aid in a player's defensive case. So we've established he's not good at it. But why does that make him less worthy of MVPs? Well, I have a couple of examples of why it shouldn't factor in all that much. So let's look at these 4 past MVPs real quick. Dirk is one of those European players that a lot of us champion. He was loyal to a specific team, changed how we viewed and what a power forward could be long term. Also, shout out to Sam Perkins for doing that as well. We can call him an NBA champion, a finals MVP, a regular season MVP. One thing we cannot call him is a good defender. And while he was long and lanky, similar to Kevin Garnett, one was a force on defense, the other was a liability. I feel as though, like Jokic, Dirk changed the game for European players, and he got a seat at the table with other greats of that time like Shaq, Kobe, Duncan, Garnett, Iverson, and others. But unlike most of them, you weren't going to toss him on the opposing team's best big man or best player, period. His very tough 2011 championship win came off the fact he had a well put together team offensively and defensively. where they could lean on his almost unstoppable shot making and hide him defensively, with Tyson Chandler able to take on duties to benefit the team. He was MVP in 2007 after getting beat in an NBA Finals I knew he'd be victorious in. It just seems people accepted that he was not a good defender, but what he could do offensively was so special they gave him a pass. That is going to be a recurring theme here. Let's look at who his competition for the MVP was in 2007. Steve Nash, Kobe Bryant, and Tim Duncan. Dallas was the best team in the entire league. Dirk averaged 24.6, 8.9, and 3.4 assists. Team Nash's Suns were the second best team in the NBA, averaging 18.6, 3.5, and 11.6 assists. Another guy well known for not being a great defender. Then Kobe and the Lakers were mediocre, but he put up 31.6, 5.7, and 5.4, but was a solid defender. So two of the top vote getters, not defenders, but I don't really remember Dirk getting any complaints. Before the unfortunate health issues, Derrick Rose carved out a stellar MVP season in 2010-2011, one of the most unguardable point guards the NBA may have seen to that point. His bread and butter was on the offensive side, and thanks to a team built on defense, his lack of defense was, like Dirk, overshadowed. He could carve up any and all defenses that stood in his way, but on the opposite end, struggled mightily, though he had guys like Joakim Noah and Luol Deng to anchor their defense. His MVP competition in 2011, Dwight Howard, that year's Defensive Player of the Year, that was getting it done on both ends. LeBron James in his first season with the Miami Heat. Again, Kobe Bryant with a solid Lakers squad. Three guys that were solid to superior defenders, overlooked as the season's MVP to a guy that was basically an offensive juggernaut. No one complained. The round amount of rebound in 1993 put up big buckets en route to his first and only MVP. He helped lead the Phoenix Suns to the best record in the NBA at 62-20. He did that averaging 25.6, 12.2, and 5.1. The player that we've never mistaken for a solid or even good defender, he outvoted Hakeem Olajuwon, who was second, and the GOAT himself, Michael Jordan, who finished at third in voting. I know there were probably plenty of Jordan fans upset, but most people did not mind that Barkley won due to the Suns going from a 53-win team to a 62-win team, and not off the back of Barkley's defense. If there's any example that shows that defense isn't a high barometer for MVP consideration, it's Stephen Curry. The only unanimous MVP ever. In a league that boasts greats like Kareem, Magic Johnson, Larry Bird, Michael Jordan, Shaquille O'Neal, Kobe Bryant, and LeBron James, Steph is the only player ever to be voted as MVP unanimously. Epic. But he did so as a lackluster defender. Now, was Steph just non-existent on defense? Absolutely not. He boasts a steals title. But he was the beneficiary of playing alongside some of that era's best defenders. Iggy, Draymond, and of course, Clay did the heavy lifting while Steph could play passing lanes or hide. We're even hearing now that maybe Steph should have his name inserted in some GOAT talks. Do I believe that? Not necessarily. But it's happening, and for a guy that in his 16 seasons has been on an all-defensive team a whopping 0 times. Let's look at who he beat out in those years. In 2015, James Harden, LeBron James, and Russell Westbrook. Not exactly cream of the crop defenders at that time. In 2016, Kawhi Leonard, LeBron James, and again Russ. This was a unanimous year and beat out one of the best two-way players we have seen since Michael Jordan and Kawhi Leonard. Well, maybe not 2016 Kawhi, but he was still a beast on both ends. Not one person I can recall complained about Steph not being a defender and winning the MVP. We can talk Magic Johnson too, but I thought he was a competent defender when necessary. I'm not saying it's hypocrisy or anything deep, but the attack on Nikola Jokic and what he's doing is a bit misguided if you ask me. But it does bring us back to what MVP stands for. The most important player to a team and their success. All those players mentioned meant a lot to the success of their teams. And whether they were lockdown defenders, or dishing dimes, or snatching up rebounds, one central theme is clear. They were massively important to their teams winning. Without them, those teams would have likely not been what they were. So in that regard, Nikola Jokic is just as qualified as any player in today's game to be locked into the MVP race. Unfortunately, this year, he won't win. SGA should win the 2025 Most Valuable Player Award or Michael Jordan Trophy because he deserves it slightly more than Jokic does this year. Winning should always be the measure of players because these teams are constructed to win games. And when you're doing that better than your contemporaries, you should be rewarded. But pump the brakes on the Jokic disrespect. He may not be Hakeem, Kareem, or Duncan, but what he's doing is evolving a position in a way that will likely reshape teams in the years to come. Once the Nuggets decide to get serious about partnering him with the right sidekick from a defensive standpoint, I think some of the negativity will fade. Regardless, appreciate all opinions, and this is just mine. Hope you all enjoyed, and if you did, please like and subscribe, and join to be a GC Hooper for future commentary.